we have idolized the construction of the pyramid, that it became a kind of a miracle.
You are demolishing a myth now. If you're curious to know about the brains behind ancient Egypt's architecture, this episode is for you. Can you still see traces of the design and tell what the house looked like?
You can see how the houses looked like, how the streets looked like from the second dynasty, or even the first dynasty, until Islamic times in Egypt, which is amazing.
President of the International Association of Egyptology, Professor Tarek Tawfik, is revealing stunning secrets of architecture in ancient Egypt. How can there be an easy answer to this question?
Astronomy played a great role.
Have we found any blueprints of structures?
You have a honeycomb of tombs under the valley, and tell me how you don't collide if you don't really have blueprints.
You were the Director General of the Grand Egyptian Museum at the time of its construction.
Achieving the connection between this museum complex and the pyramids, at the same time being ultra modern. The tomb of Tutankhamun,
it was the one intact.
You're saying it was not robbed. Actually, there were 2 attempts.
Unbelievable. Was there no crazy artist?
All the time.
Ancient Egyptian architecture cannot be mistaken for any other design around the world at any time in history. Why?
The ancient Egyptians connected their architecture from the very beginning with their beliefs. One of the things that is always a bit distracting for people looking at ancient Egypt is that they mainly look at temples and tombs and think that this is ancient Egypt. This is only a part of ancient Egypt. This is the part that was connected with the divine and with the quest for eternity. Of course, there was also the normal urban life, and we only have little remaining from this because it was built out of a perishable material, so it's built out of mud brick. So this is one of the first things that we have to really put in front of our eyes when dealing with ancient Egyptian architecture, is that the stone architecture was built for eternity. And accordingly, it was also a record for eternity when it came to scenes and inscriptions. So it has to be seen in a totally different way than the normal architecture of houses and palaces. And then these were built really for daily use.
For the temporary mortal short phase
Exactly.
on Earth.
Exactly.
All right. So even in architecture, there is a philosophy behind it that has to do deeply rooted in the Egyptian mentality. It has to do with their belief.
Certainly. And the interesting thing is that this belief also was not constant all the time. And not all had the same religious piety when it came to stone architecture, for instance, which means that we find that throughout ancient Egypt, stones from ancient temples, from ancient tombs, were reused in new tombs.
They were recycled. So a place as revered as a temple was broken down and reused to build another temple.
To build another tomb. We still, as Egyptologists, argue if it was a lack of piety or if it was actually extra piety, because when you reuse stone from a sacred building in another sacred building, or in a building that has to do, for instance, with a funerary cult, then you're still using it in a sacred context.
So you're taking the blessings or the blessed stone from a sacred place to rebuild another sacred place.
And one of the very famous examples, in my own opinion, are the Telatat blocks of King Akhenaton. I have my own a bit different opinion about these blocks. It has been seen that the temples of Akhenaton were destroyed. They wanted to destroy his legacy, but actually, at the end, he was only worshipping a form of the sun god, and the sun god was, throughout ancient Egypt, the main deity. So actually what they did, what Horemheb did, is that he had the temples dismantled and reused as filling in the Karnak temples. So they
After the death
of Akhenaton.
Akhenaton.
So they're still being used. They're not seen as something, in my opinion, unreligious or something that was to be banished. No. It had its religious meaning, and it was integrated as filling material in the pylons of, or in 3 pylons of the Karnak temples.
So, after all, Akhenaton was not really calling for something totally odd. He was still calling for worshipping one of the major gods or one of the major deities of ancient Egypt.
This is actually
This
true.
is your theory.
This is my theory. He didn't really leave the main religious cult of the sun. He just venerated one form, which was Aton, and at the end, this was not really leaving the main cult that the ancient Egyptians believed in. It was just giving it a different form. But he, of course, tampered with the funerary beliefs, moving them from the west to the east.
That is a major change.
That's a major change, of course. And in my opinion, this was one of the reasons why his revolution, as they call it, religious revolution, did not succeed.
He shook the belief system harder than he should have.
He did. In an article I published a couple of years ago, I called the article The Tomb of Tutankhamun, Back to Osiris in Plan and Decoration. And there I suggest that one of the greatest achievements of Tutankhamun was returning to Osiris. And
you think it's an achievement?
Yes, because he gave the ancient Egyptian people back their belief and their system for the netherworld, the old established system that was related to Osiris and related to the West. So his tomb, architecturally, in my opinion, was a clear return to the West and to the realm of Osiris.
All right. But if we talk about the architecture in general, I mean, for an untrained eye like mine, I'm not a specialist. If I look at any architectural structure that is ancient Egyptian, I wouldn't say that there are differences. How can you trace the differences? Are there any differences?
There are certainly a lot of differences. And the differences, there is a kind of development throughout ancient Egypt. We tend to forget that we are dealing, when we're dealing with ancient Egypt, with 3,000 years of development. What's interesting is that the ancient Egyptians were so brilliant that you always recognize the architecture as being ancient Egyptian. But when you look carefully, you will always find differences. And this is what helps us nowadays as Egyptologists when making finds to distinguish between one building and another, because there are differences.
So you don't find it out from the date that is inscripted somewhere. You find it out from the style and the design.
Yes. When it comes to architecture, because you find a part of a column, you find a part of a wall, you find a part of a ceiling, and there you have to start looking what matches it. And it's not always, you don't always have the perfect match.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle that is not complete.
Yes.
Can you give me an example to bring the picture closer? Because I want to understand visually how can the style of the architecture and the design be different, let's say from the Old Kingdom to the Middle or the New Kingdom.
So for instance, let's take the pylon. You don't have the pylon at all in the Old Kingdom.
At all.
You have massive temples with massive walls. So for instance, when you look at the Valley Temple of King Khafre, the second pyramid, the walls are more than 10 meters thick.
10 meters thick?
10 meters thick, and they're made out of the local stone. And then they're even cladded by granite. Let's remember together that we are in the 4th dynasty, and that we're talking about approximately 4,500 years. And then think about it, that it was already an incredible logistic achievement to move from Aswan the huge cladding blocks 800 kilometers via the Nile to make this amazing structure. So if you ask me what is one of the most amazing structures from the Old Kingdom, it's actually the temple of Khafra. It's
the
amazing.
Temple, not the pyramids.
Of course the pyramid is impressive.
It's iconic.
But look at the blocks of that temple. They are much bigger than the blocks of the pyramids.
All right.
So it's really a very impressive temple, and this is why this temple has survived in such a pristine condition. But no pylon. The pylon then is a development that comes to flourish very much in the New Kingdom. In the New Kingdom, and then it flourishes in the New Kingdom, and there it becomes actually a platform for royal propaganda.
Okay.
So the scenes that you have on these pylons reflect the victory of the king, or the victories of the king, and that they are being blessed by the god who this temple belongs to.
So these pylons had a function, and that function was propaganda.
Exactly.
Right.
More than one function. But as they were in the front and they were visible to the public, so they were actually the media, the newspapers of that time. And for instance, when you look at the temple of Luxor, Ramses II uses the pylon to illustrate the Battle of Kadesh. So you have an illustration of the battle, and the people can see it. This is the part that was accessible to all.
One of his major achievements.
As he
All
saw
right.
it, yes.
So, is it true that ancient Egyptians really focused in architecture on function more than beauty?
The fact that until today we have this Egyptomania, and that people tend to come and stand with awe in front of these temples and tombs, this is, in my opinion, clear evidence that the ancient Egyptians achieved a balance between functionality and beauty. And if we go a step further in the philosophy of the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, when it comes to the second life after death, they are imagining it as being the perfect version of what is on earth. So
Okay.
they would always want to have the most beautiful. When they are showing the human body, they show it in a perfect way.
Especially in sculptures.
In sculptures, of course. Because this is the way you want to be resurrected.
Right.
So it was always the fear of having something negative in the second world afterlife. But else, no. It was, everything was beautiful, everything was perfect.
Speaking of perfection, symmetry in ancient Egyptian architecture is unbelievable. It's brilliantly engineered. But why were Egyptians, and how were they so mathematically accurate in doing everything with such great symmetry?
Astronomy played a great role from the very early beginnings of ancient Egyptian civilization. And astronomy helped in reaching mathematical precision. So accordingly, they were really unbelievably accurate when it came to the cardinal directions in their buildings. And
Why did they do that?
Because the beginning of the ancestral cult in ancient Egypt is actually more directed towards the unperishable stars of the north. So again, astronomy is the strong point before the sun cult then becomes the dominating cult in ancient Egypt. So stars from the beginning are very important, and they, in my opinion, helped in developing mathematical precision very early on in ancient Egypt. And the buildings were always directed in cosmic directions. So when, for instance, King Djoser wanted to be in the afterlife with his ancestors, the imperishable stars of the north, so he put himself in what we call a serdab, which is a small room with no access, and he only had in front of his eyes two little openings looking towards these stars. So
Wow.
this little serdab had to be on the north side of his pyramid, of his step pyramid, in order for him to be looking at these stars. And accordingly also his funerary temple was on that northern side. When then in the 4th dynasty the sun cult takes over, the temple, the funerary temple, moves instead of building it on the north side, they now build it on the east side.
So when the belief changed or shifted, the architecture as well shifted.
Exactly.
All right.
The location changed of the funerary temple from the north side to the east side, and then it will remain on the east side, because the ancient Egyptians, for them, the sun cult was something easily understandable. The sun rises in the east side of the Nile, and goes down in the west side of the Nile. So, east side, this is the world of the living. West side, that's the world of the dead.
Clear cut.
Clear cut.
All right. But what was the need for the magnitude of these structures, the size of the huge, of course, pyramids, number one, but even the temples, even the statues?
Impressing the people. In my opinion, it was not only politically, but political and religious. So with these buildings, there was this fantastic merging between the religion and its power, and kingship and its power. So accordingly, the king becomes the mediator for the people to get into the second life after death. And
so for the king to associate himself with the divine and to connect with the people, he has to acquire some grandeur.
Yes, this is one thing, in order also to show that he is superior to the normal person. Everything is grander, everything is bigger. But on the other hand, I think that exactly this role of the king as a mediator, this led to the precise building of the pyramids, because people were contributing to this structure for their own benefit, in order for the king to be their mediator to have a good life in the second life after death.
So you're telling me that the king convinced the ordinary people that building these pyramids was not for his own glory, but it was for their own interest, and that's why they had the will to build them.
Yes. Because think about it. The normal person did not have the means to have an own elaborate tomb. Actually, the tombs that we're talking about in ancient Egypt are mainly the tombs of the high officials of the high society. So the tombs of the simple people, they were very simple graves. So, but of course, they wish for something better in the second life after death. Who will be the mediator?
Who will take them there?
It's the king.
I see. With the magnitude or the size of the ancient Egyptian architectural structures comes the question of how. And there are so many theories trying to reach the how. But when we pre-chatted before we record this, you said that can easily be answered. How can there be an easy answer to this question? How were the pyramids built?
The problem is we always tend to look for solutions that are beyond the actual finds that we have seen. And at some point we have idolized the construction of the pyramid, so that it became a kind of a miracle how it was built.
But it is.
It is a miracle when it comes to size. It is a miracle when it comes to how the stones were moved. But at the end, we have resulted to what we call experimental archaeology. And a lot of the stones of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, for instance, are 2.5 tons in weight. 2.5 tons in weight can be quite well handled on a sledge by 6 people. 6 people.
Only 6 people?
Only 6 people. Only 6 people pulling it on a sledge. And
pulling it, not pushing it.
Pulling it.
So they are on a sledge and
the
they
stone
drag
is on the sledge. The stone is on the sledge, and the 6 people are pulling it. One of the interesting things is, and this is something that AI nowadays in a lot of the movies that are done, quick movies that are done about pyramids, give a wrong impression. There were no wheels used at all in Egypt until the late period. So the wheel was not used. They used sledges on the sand.
So the sledge is a flat wooden surface?
Exactly.
With logs underneath?
Not even logs.
Not even logs?
Not even logs.
So
the logs you would need when you start being on a ramp. And this would be the next thing that we will be talking about. So the point is, everybody is looking for a way how the stones were lifted up.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And that a kind of crane must have been used. The ancient Egyptians were people that were very proud of any new achievement or any new discovery. So if they would have discovered a crane or a pulley, this would have appeared in their scenes everywhere.
Okay.
It does not. Throughout ancient Egyptian history, we do not have one scene of a crane or a pulley in the tombs or temples of ancient Egypt.
So without a crane, without wheels, a mere sledge, how these tons, how were they lifted up?
When you buy a car nowadays, what are you looking for? Horsepower.
That's right.
So, the same applies, in my opinion, to ancient Egypt. The bigger the stone, more manpower was needed. And actually, we have scenes from the Middle Kingdom where a huge statue, if I remember right, of Habi Jafai, is being pulled, and it's being pulled by 30 people.
30 people.
30 people. And this is exactly what I'm saying. You have more weight, you increase the number of people pulling. And that's what is it. This was it. This was the whole secret about it. It's manpower, which is amazing. So, in my opinion, the pyramid was built by manpower. It was built by using ramps of mud brick that were not very steep. So they were really going about it step by step.
So building a ramp around the structure?
Yes, it went up like a spiral.
Uh-huh.
And at the end, while removing this spiral, you were then putting in the casing stones of the pyramid. So this was the final step that was being done.
Okay.
You were putting in the casing that was made out of finer limestone that came from the other side of the Nile, from Tura. So this was the final touch. And the final touch also concealed that not all the stones inside the pyramids are of the same size. Not all of the stones are perfectly cut. This was a bit of a myth that was built up over centuries. You can really see it yourself. The next time you go to the pyramids, have a look at the stones. You will see that they are of different sizes and that there are some voids between them. So I think it was the last layer of stone before the casing stones that was perfect, and the casing was perfect, but what was inside was stable, structurally stable, but it was not perfect.
But then there are internal rooms, and there is perfect engineering of the location of those rooms and the ramps and the passages going up and down. How would ancient Egyptians build such structures perfectly and precisely without blueprints?
There must have been blueprints, but we didn't get them. They didn't reach us.
Have we found any blueprints of structures, of architecture?
We have from the Ramesside period, from the tombs of the Ramessides in the Valley of the Kings. We actually have a blueprint that is kept in the Museo Egizio in Turin. So we do have blueprints.
All right.
But most of the blueprints we did not get. They were lost with time. But of course, you cannot build something like this without blueprints. And talking, for instance, about the Valley of the Kings, one of the amazing things is we're talking now about 65 tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Only 2 of them ever touched. And this was tombs that were rock cut. So
what do you mean by only 2 of them were touched?
Now, the 2 of them touched each other, which means
touched each other.
That they were really carving these tombs in the rock, but they must have had plans where the other tombs before have been, in order not to collide with any of these tombs.
Okay.
So it only happened one time in the case of the tomb of Ramses III that he collided with another tomb. Else it never happened.
And that entails that there must have been a plan for these tombs on blueprints.
Yes. You have a honeycomb of tombs under the valley, and tell me how you do that, how you don't collide, if you don't really have blueprints or you have a clear idea how the tombs were distributed in the valley.
It makes sense, because how would you know? It's just on the outside, it's a mass of rocks.
Yeah.
You can never tell where a tomb is. Okay, that's amazing. So, if we talk about those similarities and the differences and the developments in design, you told me something about the changes in design or the additions, for example, of pylons. But was there no crazy artist? Was there no odd one out? Someone who broke those very strict rules to create something different?
All the time. So, for instance, the rulers of the first and second dynasty, they had the superstructures, at least, built out of mud brick. So this was organic, perishable material. King Nefertret, or Djoser as we call him, builds the step pyramid and the whole complex around it out of stone. this is crazy. This is
This-
something totally new. And now, bear with me for a moment. For the ancient Egyptian, his house, his limestone house, was 2-3 meters high. If he had a roof, it reached 5 meters. The mastaba tombs, the impressive ones, had a height of approximately 8 meters. And now he builds a pyramid that's 60 meters high. For them, this was a skyscraper.
All right.
And now tell me about crazy. And it doesn't stop here, because we then start a kind of a race to build even bigger and more impressive tombs.
I can build higher. I can go higher.
Reaches its climax with Khufu, who builds the highest pyramid, 146 meters high, which remained until only a couple of hundred years ago the highest building in the world. Imagine.
All right. So if we say that the design and the concepts were going into a certain direction, which we think that the pyramids and the giant structures are the norm, actually this was the madness. This was the madness that changed the concept of design.
It was so impressive, and it was related to the sun cult, that it will remain throughout ancient Egypt, which means that also in the 5th and 6th dynasty they will have pyramids, but now they will have pyramids that really take a standard size. They do not extend a height of 60 to 75 meters, and they have their burial chamber below ground. So it becomes a standard pyramid in the 5th and 6th dynasty. It continues in the 8th dynasty. Then you have pyramids being built in the Middle Kingdom, but the concept of building a pyramid out of stone has become too expensive. This national project of building a pyramid,
You cannot do that
you
every
cannot
other year.
do that anymore. So they start using again mud brick and rubble and interesting inner skeletons of the pyramid construction.
What do you mean by interesting inner skeletons?
So in one case, for instance, the pyramid was divided into compartments.
Okay.
And the compartments, the walls of these compartments were built out of mud brick, and then the inner parts were filled with rubble. And from the outside, it was cased with limestone. So for some time, it would look similar to the Great Pyramids of Giza. But then, of course, the material was too weak, and it would collapse. And the beautiful limestone was then reused. It was used as a quarry, because it was easy to remove these stones from the mud brick structure below. So actually what you see today, the remains you see today, are much less impressive than the way it used to look like.
Then there was this big shift again in design. The pyramids were the tombs of the royalty, and then these tombs moved into the heart of the rocks in the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. Was this because of practicality reasons as well?
It was one of the seldom cases in ancient Egypt where tombs were really hidden in the Valley of the Kings at the beginning of the New Kingdom. So what we have been raised on seeing movies from Hollywood is that tombs are always hidden and you have to find them, and there are hidden passages and when we are talking about the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom, no, actually in most cases the entrance was really clear, and there was nothing hidden.
You are demolishing a myth now that ancient Egyptians decided to hide their tombs so that they wouldn't be hijacked.
No, they didn't hide anything. And you have a clear piece of evidence. Nearly all of the tombs in ancient Egypt were robbed. Why? And they were robbed quite or not very far after the time of the building and their use. So already within a couple of hundred years, a few hundred years later, these tombs were already robbed.
Okay.
Because the entrance for the pyramids, for instance, of the Old Kingdom was always on the north side. You knew where the entrance was. There's nothing hidden.
Makes sense.
Yeah? There's nothing hidden. You know where it is. So you will find the burial chamber and you will get what's inside. But at the beginning of the 18th dynasty, we have the architect of Thutmose I, Aneni, and he says that he has built the tomb of his master in a place that nobody has seen and nobody has seen and nobody has heard, so in complete secrecy. And this will continue. In my opinion, it only continues until the time of Tutankhamun, because
Why?
Tutankhamun, as I said, celebrates the return to the Valley of the Kings. Tutankhamun, people tend not to notice this. The tomb of Tutankhamun is the easiest accessible in the whole of the Valley of the Kings. It's at the foot of the valley, so
Right.
you don't have to go up, you don't have to go down. It's really the easiest accessible in the Valley of the Kings. And
Funnily enough, it was the one intact.
yes,
It was not stolen.
but
It was not robbed.
he was lucky. So this was a stroke of luck for Egyptology and for the world that this tomb was more or less. But you're saying it was not robbed. Actually, there were 2 attempts to rob it right after the tomb had been sealed. And it was at that time the cemetery police, the Magi, that resealed the tomb.
No, we need to slow down here, because this is one of the most iconic places, and nobody would ever imagine that it has been attempted, or there was an attempt to rob it. How do we know that it was attempted? The robbery was attempted, and twice, not once.
Yeah, because the police of the necropolis, twice resealed the tomb and sealed it with their stamp after they had been able to stop the robbery. Inside the tomb, there was havoc created by the robbers. While attempting to flee, they lost a few of the things that they had already stolen, and one of them was a piece that fell in the hands of Howard Carter, And this is what made him start looking for the tomb of this little known pharaoh at the time.
So Howard Carter found a piece that was supposed to be inside Tutankhamun's tomb.
Yes.
Found it outside.
He didn't even find it. It was being sold in the market. Somebody had found it, and he bought it and found the name of this little known pharaoh. And now he had this quest of finding the tomb of Tutankhamun. And actually, he chose the right place. But for 6 seasons, he kept digging around the entrance. And while he was already in his final season, and his sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, was telling him, "That's it, you won't get any money anymore." Then one of the boys who was making coffee found the first step of the staircase leading down to the tomb.
Unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is a very interesting story of how Howard Carter got the idea to search for Tutankhamun's tomb.
But the interesting thing is that afterwards, and this is part of the evidence for my theory, after Tutankhamun, they don't conceal the tombs in the Valley of the Kings anymore. So then it is always known where the tomb is, and at the entrance it is written for whom the tomb is, and there are prayers and. So the tombs are not hidden anymore.
Right. If we go inside the tomb and talk about the design and the functions of different rooms, it was not merely a space where they put the coffin or the belongings of the dead. There were several rooms and corridors inside, right? What is the
certainly
basic idea of the design?
Here we have to differentiate between royal burials and between the burials for high officials or for the high society. The royal burials, in the whole architecture, they reflect the journey of the sun.
Okay.
Because the king wishes to join the sun in its daily journey, because this means perpetual rebirth. He will be reborn with the sun every morning. At the same time, this also is a kind of securing this cosmic act of the sun reappearing every day for the whole popularity of Egypt. So all the people of Egypt are then safe because the sun rises every day again, and life starts every day again.
And how is that reflected in the design of the tomb?
By the so-called religious books that were drawn on the walls of these tombs. So at the beginning of the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom, we have the so-called Imidwat, what is in the netherworld. Then we start to have the Book of the Caves, then we have the Book of the Earth, then we have the Book of the Heavens. And at the end, actually all of them tell the same story. It's the sun goes down in the evening, and it is reborn and comes up at dawn. And accordingly, death is defeated.
Okay.
And the king, as I said, wants to join the king in this journey. But this is only true for the king. So
not for everybody.
Not for everybody. So, but the king, it has to be secured for the king in order to secure this cosmic order.
For everyone else?
For everyone else.
Okay.
And accordingly, the tombs have these scenes and texts that are mainly connected to the journey of the sun. The famous god Amun, for instance, nearly doesn't appear in the Valley of the Kings at all.
Interesting. At all?
At all. Because he has nothing to do with the idea of rebirth. This is the god Ra. This is the sun god.
It's only exclusive to the god of the sun.
Yeah.
Okay. But rearranging the rooms inside, does it have to do with also directions and the cosmos and the alignment with the stars, like it used to be with the pyramids?
No.
No.
Actually, one main direction. And this is why I said
the sun.
When it comes to Tutankhamun, it was his great achievement to return to the West. The main thing is that the burial chamber is towards the west.
Okay. Now, moving from this to the life of ordinary people and the houses of the domestic life, the ordinary people and their cities and their streets and their homes. This is very difficult to get a glimpse of because, like you said, it's made of mud brick and there are not many remains.
Well, we are lucky that we have 3 examples that were to some extent well kept. The best one kept is on the island of Elephantine in Aswan. And there we really can follow the development of a city from the 2nd dynasty or even the 1st dynasty until Islamic times in Egypt, which is amazing. So this is really this archaeological hill, this tell, is amazing. Egyptologists have been working there, going down and seeing strata by strata how the city developed. So there you can see how the houses looked like, how the streets looked like, how the let's say the simple chapels inside a city looked like. It's amazing. So this is the best kept example. Then we have Tel Amarna, which is the city of Akhenaton, which is a kind of a special case, of course. We can call it a case study.
Because it was an exception to the concepts and beliefs of the time.
Exactly.
And that reflected on the design as well?
Not really when it comes to the urban design, no.
They didn't have it didn't last long enough to change something visually, right?
Exactly. It seems that the special thing was at that time that the houses, at least of the nobles, had their own little shrines for the Holy Family, which was the family of Akhenaton, inside the home, which was interesting. But else, the whole structure of the houses and of the streets and so on was not very different than any other city. And then we still have Dir el-Medina, which is again an exception and a case study because it was a workman's village. of the workmen who worked on the funerary temple of King Amenhotep III. You know this temple today only by
the funerary temple.
Yeah, only by the two Memnon colossi, these
course.
huge statues. And a German team has been working there that has discovered now more and more statues changing the appearance of this place. But this city, there the men were working on building this temple that was then destroyed by an earthquake, which is very interesting, which means that the city, the workman's village, was very close to the place of construction.
The workplace.
And the other thing that is seldomly noticed is that although the main world of the living was on the east side of the Nile, when it came to building funerary temples and working on royal tombs, the villagers and the people were living on the west side. So
for practical reasons, they build a city near the construction work site, near the site, to be able to work, although this is not the place for the living, it's the place for the dead.
And here you have the contrast that you were looking for. The temple is built totally out of stone. The workman's village is built out of mud brick.
But can you still see traces of the design and tell what the house looked like?
Yes, which is amazing. They were very small, but still they had a kind of a general design, because when we look at Deir el-Medina, for instance, these were really small houses. And they had an inner staircase going up to a roof. So you were actually being able to use also the roof with the nice air in the evening. You could sleep in summer on the top. Under the stairs there would be a storage place. There would be a fireplace to make food. So it was a very functional house. And it seems that the people were quite happy living there. And as they were the artisans working on the royal tombs, they then seem to have gotten the privilege to make for themselves quite pretty tombs. And they had the skills and know-how to do them in a really fantastic way, because they were doing it for the kings.
Well, so if they are the artists, then they have at least the talent to do it, if not the means.
They certainly did. This is why the tombs of Deir el-Medina are really amazing.
And they're not for royalty or high officials.
Not at all. Not at all.
Because they were the artists.
Exactly.
But it has to make sense. I mean, I'm the artist. I have to have like a very good-looking tomb, at least for myself.
Well, I have the skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to imagine a house. I want to close my eyes and enter an ancient Egyptian house. What do I see when I go inside?
In order to imagine a house, we will gather the information, bits and pieces from different things. So, for instance, the sign H in the hieroglyphs shows the simple design of a house. And this tells us that you always had, or for an elaborate house, you would have a kind of a corridor first, and then it goes into the main living quarters, which means that there is a kind of privacy for the family inside. So the women of the house, the children and so on, are in their private quarters. Another interesting thing is when it comes to doors and windows. So it seems that we were dealing with mats, and these mats would be rolled up in the morning like the rouleaus we have today.
They had rolling mats for windows.
Yes, and we have the evidence for that. Actually, it was in the funerary complex of King Josa. At the depth of 28 meters, you find at the top a kind of a cylinder. And what is the cylinder? It is a rolled up mat. A mat that has been rolled up. And if you look at the tombs then in the 4th dynasty, at each mastaba there is a stylized rolled up mat at the entrance, but now used to put the name of the deceased on it. So for the windows and for the doors, we had these mats. So they would provide a kind of a shade, provide privacy, and at the same time allow for air to be entering the house. The mud brick houses are much cooler in summer than houses built out of stone. Mm-hmm. And in winter, they are warmer than the outside. And this is why this kind of architecture continued in Egypt until maybe only 150 years ago.
We still have in the countryside.
When concrete started. And then concrete took over. And for the countryside, actually, concrete was not a good development.
Mm-hmm. Still, there are houses made of mud brick.
Yes.
I mean, maybe 20, 25 years ago, I did see houses made of mud brick.
They used to be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they are disappearing. But they were more practical. They were, of course, financially much cheaper. They did not need an air conditioning. And this was the idea of the brilliant architect Hassan Fathi. He started a whole village with this concept, and with the concept also of having for these houses like little domes that even provide more cooling in summer.
But the dome was not really ancient Egyptian, right?
Not the dome.
But the idea of the ventilation, the hood.
For the ancient Egyptians, they had the barrel ceiling. So not a complete dome, but a barrel ceiling, like half a barrel.
Okay.
This was ancient Egyptian, and starting from the Old Kingdom. Already they were very advanced in the architecture of these half barrels, and they used them especially also for storage facilities, for silos. And until today, silos made out of mud brick are the more healthy place to store crops.
Which brings us to the question of the impact of ancient Egyptian architecture on modern day design. Can we trace ideas or concepts in modern day design that go back to ancient Egypt?
When you go through the streets of Cairo, especially from the time of the family of Muhammad Ali, you will from time to time see little influences from ancient Egypt. Worldwide.
But no, before we move to worldwide, give me examples. Like what?
When you see, for instance, the statues in the main squares, you will find always ancient Egyptian influences, hieroglyphs, statues, some influence. So
Right.
when you see the tomb of Saad Zardoul, the national leader and hero of the 1919 revolution, his tomb is built like an ancient Egyptian temple in the heart of Cairo now. So there are buildings that have have clearly been influenced by the ancient Egyptian architecture, and and this has been done on purpose, of course, in order to keep the identity, because ancient Egypt is something unique to Egypt, which means when you use the ancient Egyptian elements, you are using something that's really unique to Egypt.
That's right.
And I would really hope that with all of our recent building activities, which are much needed, because you always need to build new, that this aspect should be used but well studied, because the ancient Egyptians used architecture with a lot of symbolism. So again, when we use it today, we should respect this symbolism and use it wisely in order to underline our Egyptian identity.
But in order to respect that symbolism, we need to understand it first.
Most certainly, most certainly.
I mean, if I'm going into a temple or an architectural structure, how would I understand that this symbolizes something or a concept that I need to be aware of?
The point is that you have to go into the building unbiased, and this is something very difficult, of course, to try to be as objective as possible and to try to see this temple with the eyes of the ancient Egyptians. And then you will start understanding why they built what. So, for instance, in the Karnak temples, when you enter the great hypostyle hall, which has 134 columns. The 12 that are in the middle are higher than the rest, than the 122 others. And there was the difference in height. There were windows, clerestory windows. So windows that only allow for a certain amount of sun to penetrate.
Windows on top of the columns, you mean?
No, because you have columns that are lower and columns that are higher.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference in height.
All right.
And in this difference of height, there were
Comes
windows.
There were windows.
There were windows.
Literally.
Literally. And these windows only allowed for a certain amount of sunlight to penetrate. The idea was to illuminate the main processional way for the sacred procession in the middle. All the rest was dark, but this main processional way was illuminated.
So they even engineered natural lighting.
Yes.
Is it true that the windows in the houses were high in the walls, not low, to let the sun in but not let the heat in?
True.
Really?
True.
One more specific question. Did ancient Egyptians have lavatories in the bathrooms? Because I read that, but I don't know. Have we found evidence of bathrooms and what they looked like?
We have found a few examples, not many, but it seemed that it was a hole which would then be filled up with sand in order to, or you would take out the waste from the tomb. We have found in very seldom cases also kind of a stone seat. It's like our
like
toilets
in the
today.
Modern tradition,
Like
in the modern sense.
Modern sense, yes.
Okay.
So yes, but it seems that in the normal house, it was not always part of the house inside, which would make sense. Even in Europe, until recently, until the 40s, they had the toilets outside.
Outside of the house.
Outside of the house.
Not part of the main building.
Exactly, because of the smell.
Of course, makes sense.
Yeah.
There is something that I don't know if it existed or not, because we don't see in any of the architectural structures of ancient Egypt. It's doors. Doors to temples, doors to houses. Were there any doors? We only see entrances.
There were doors, and we even in texts have clear references to doors. And many of the doors of temples have been burnt when temples were ransacked later, because they were made out of wood. We still have clearly in temples and in tombs the places for the hinges of doors and for the closing device, which was not a key. So
I was just going to ask, which door does the key of life open?
No, it's a sign of life. It's not the key of life.
So it's not a key at all?
It's not a key at all. No, it's not a key at all. They used sliding locks for the tombs and houses and temples, but no keys.
There are no keys in ancient Egypt.
For ancient Egypt as we know it, we have not found any keys, no.
And the locks were made of metal, like the locks we know, the traditional pull and maybe...
Yes. So you would have a kind of a bolt that would go through two loops and then go into a hole in the wall in order to close the door.
Technically, this is where we learned to make locks from.
A simple way, yes.
In a simple way, okay. You were the Director General of the Grand Egyptian Museum at the time of its construction. And I have visited the place a couple of times, but it looked ultra-modern to me. Still, the guides would say that it is inspired by ancient Egyptian design and concepts and philosophy, not just design. How is that possible? Can you explain to me how it was applied, the ancient Egyptian concepts of architecture, to the Grand Egyptian Museum?
The Grand Egyptian Museum remains until today one of the projects that had a really impressive competition for its design. 1,577 designs from 83 countries, including Egypt. And this design was chosen exactly out of the reasons that you have mentioned. because first it harmonizes with the surroundings, it harmonizes with the pyramids that are only 2 kilometers away, and it incorporates symbolism from ancient Egypt. So the whole design of the museum complex starts from a virtual point and then opens up towards the pyramids, going in a virtual line towards the top of the Great Pyramid of Khufu, and going on a virtual line towards the top of the Menkaure pyramid. Accordingly, it's like rays of sun going towards the pyramids and achieving the connection between this museum complex and the pyramids, at the same time being ultra modern to show the clear difference between what our ancestors built and the landmark that the modern Egyptians are building today. When you enter the museum now, you enter through a pyramid that is projecting from the facade. There are actually in the facade 7 pyramids, because 7 is a magical number in ancient Egypt. And these pyramids diminish in size as you get further away from the pyramids of Giza. If you look at the whole wall, the whole facade, you will see that it is all the triangular pyramidal shape design that is the decoration. When you enter inside and go up the grand staircase, you have natural sun illumination illuminating the grand staircase, like in the temples in ancient Egypt. You have the idea of going up towards the Holy of Holies. In this case, you are then surprised that you're standing in front of the pyramids, and then you start your visit either going towards the right, towards the treasures of Tutankhamun, or towards the left, going to explore Egypt from prehistory until the time of the Greeks and Romans in Egypt. Of course, there's also the idea of having this magnificent, great space in order to show the colossal statues and the colossal architectural elements from ancient Egypt in a way that provides for them space so that you can really enjoy them in their whole splendor. They are not really confined to a narrow space. No, it's big space. So you can really enjoy them with all their details from all sides. It is, in my opinion, a very successful mix between the ancient Egyptian influences and a very grand modern architecture.
I also heard that the ventilation system is also inspired by ancient Egyptian concepts of letting the air flow from one direction to another. Is that implemented as well based on ancient Egyptian ventilation ideas?
Actually, it happens more or less a bit naturally. but the ventilation system in ancient Egyptian temples has not yet been studied to the full. So yes, there is, for instance, in the atrium, in the great entrance lobby, it is actually open from both sides, which means that you have a natural airflow inside. And the last year, where we had our soft opening, has really proven that it remains cool and nice throughout the year.
Even in the hot summer.
Even in the hot summer. And I remember that there was supposed to be an air conditioning system for the atrium. And I asked the board of directors to have it removed, because it would have been extremely expensive. And at the same time, I explained to the board of directors that the atrium actually is a space between two buildings. So it's a natural air shaft. And it's a semi-shaded, so it's open from the top, more or less. So the air also comes from the top down. And it seems that my concept was correct. So I'm very proud that I saved for Egypt quite some money by removing this artificial air conditioning and resolving to the natural air conditioning.
Well, every time on in a guided tour, this has to be mentioned, the miracle of the ventilation without air conditioning. So now we know the source. Was it difficult? Was it a challenge overseeing that gigantic projects with all eyes of the world looking at it?
It was a huge challenge. But as I saw it from the first moment on, as a national duty and a privilege, a national privilege to oversee this project for the people of Egypt, I did it with devotion and love and care, and I think it shows.
It does, definitely. And it's like a wonder. It's like an ultra-modern wonder. And you can still see where ancient Egypt is. And I think this is the kind of standard that should be when you are displaying ancient Egyptian antiquities.
Well, it most certainly is the museum of the 21st century. It is very difficult, even if you use lots of financial resources, to build now something that can really compete with the Grand Egyptian Museum. My real reward nowadays is, when I visit the museum, is when I see the people enjoying their visit, when I see Egyptians working as tour guides, as curators, even as security and so on. So having been able to participate in creating something that benefits people and that brings them joy, I think you couldn't have more than this.
Of course. And can we say that there are other museums like the Grand Egyptian Museum, of course not like the Grand Egyptian Museum, but applying the concepts of ancient Egyptian architecture to other museums? I've seen in Minya there is...
In Minya there is a museum being built, the Aton Museum, And this museum takes from the outside the shape of a pyramid. But actually, it's not a pyramid. Actually, it is the sun rays of Aton coming down. So it is a pyramid and it's not a pyramid, and this is part of the genius of the architecture.
How is it a pyramid and not a pyramid?
Well, when the sun penetrates through the clouds, it goes down in a pyramidal form.
True.
So you see the rays going down through the clouds. And this is actually the way Echnaton showed the rays coming down from the Aton, from the sun disk.
Uh-huh.
And this is the way we show here that this is the sun, but in a kind of a concealed way, which is very interesting. But all around the world, when you have Egyptian collections, there is always the attempt in some way or another to organize the pieces like in an ancient Egyptian temple, or have some illumination alluring to ancient Egypt. So there is always the attempt, and there is also always the temptation to try to reflect ancient Egyptian architecture in any attempt to exhibit ancient Egypt.
But these would be like arrangement attempts, not working on the actual structure of the museum, which has already been built long before the exhibitions.
Yes, because these museums, some of them in Europe, for instance, were not originally built as museums. So they were castles and they were transformed, for instance. So no, there you don't find these elements. Interestingly, for instance, in the Neues Museum in Berlin, there were some paintings on the walls that were inspired by the environment of ancient Egypt and the ruins of ancient Egypt and so on. Only little remains because they were heavily damaged during the Second World War. But here you see that there was a clear attempt to imitate ancient Egyptian atmosphere. The same thing you find in the Egyptian collection in Vienna, in the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna. There, until today, when you enter the collection, the walls are decorated, imitating the decoration of an ancient Egyptian tomb. So
it is the design and the concepts are present to a degree.
Yes.
But we can say that the Grand Egyptian Museum is the museum that is constructed based on ancient Egyptian concepts.
No. Actually merging ancient Egyptian with ultra-modern design. And this is the special thing about it.
That's fantastic. What can we learn in our ways of thinking of architecture from the concepts of ancient Egyptians? What are the things that we can take from them for practical reasons, even for environment reasons, that we can use in our structures today for our daily use?
The ancient Egyptians were very much into recycling. So this is something that we should really learn from them. I don't remember that we really have waste from ancient Egypt. So even when a simple jar would break, they would use the potsherds to write on them.
Nothing goes to waste in ancient Egypt.
Nothing goes to waste in ancient Egypt. On the other hand, this fantastic quest that they had, which was connected to their beliefs, to build something of lasting beauty and something that is timeless. And they have succeeded. Even with jewelry, even with clothes, even with sandals, even, of course, with architecture in an impressive way, timeless beauty.
It was a pleasure having you today, and we really, really enjoyed that episode about architecture. You opened our eyes to so many things that haven't crossed our minds before when it comes to ancient Egyptian architecture. Thank you, Professor.
Each time you enter an ancient Egyptian temple or tomb, you will discover something new. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.